Jack is everywhere flirting with other women, relying on his identity as a boxer, and showing no regard for others. In the end, he falls into Henry's trap during a match and gets knocked out cold by a seemingly weaker opponent. He lies unconscious in the hospital, deeply affecting his sister Susie. Swift retaliation against Henry ensues. Welcome to Aovo Movie Recaps channel. We hope you thoroughly enjoy our videos. Before diving in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. They first target the referee, brutally assaulting him in broad daylight. Then they find a boxer jogging in the park and shoot him dead. When they go after Henry, he's already fled after getting wind of their plans. So, they track down Henry's money launderer and beat him until he reveals Henry's whereabouts. But the accountant has no clue. Susie's father, Bobby, who is in jail, learns of her actions and vehemently criticizes her impulsiveness. With the whole town in turmoil and one son hospitalized, he doesn't want any harm to come to his daughter.
You fucking stand down. I've got people to do this. You leave it to your old man. You go home, have something to eat. Put your feet up. Relax.
Taking heed of her father's words, Susie returns home and tries to calm her frayed nerves through exercise. Suddenly, Eddie shows up at her door.
How'd you know where I live?
Good morning. Let's have a chat.
He came specifically to apologize. He never imagined Henry would stoop to such depths, using Jack's life as leverage to steal business from Susie's family. Although he had previously clashed with Susie to drive her out of his estate, he cannot bear to stand idly by when she's in trouble. Moreover, he has $137 million tied up in Henry's money laundering scheme. As friends who are often short on cash know, money only counts if it's in your own pocket. Henry has become their common enemy. However, while he speaks nicely behind the scenes, he continues to plot with John's assistant to drive Susie away. The assistant tells him that if they can find a list of the other 13 marijuana production sites belonging to Susie's family, they can pressure Susie into withdrawing from Eddie's estate. Eddie agrees to help them find the list. When he returns home, he asks his mother for a copy of the list, containing addresses of estates in similar situations to theirs. He goes door to door to investigate. Meanwhile, Susie receives a call from Henry. He dares not meet Susie in person, and instead secretly sends her a hamburger delivery. In return, he threatens Susie.
You touch one of my people again, I fucking will. When I get the thumbs up, I'm coming knocking.
With just one sentence, he inadvertently exposed that he had someone backing him up. Susie seeks out Andy and questions him about how he knew her family's address. Now even Henry knows that she has a home she cannot return to. Eddie brings her to Jimmy and reveals that it was Jimmy who secretly provided Eddie with her family's address. Jimmy has an exceptional memory and once accidentally saw Susie buying a pair of shoes online, so he memorized the address. Obviously, Henry also found out from him. Susie asks him to carefully think about who else he might have told the address to. After pondering for a while, he recalls encountering a girl named Carla at a service area. Carla had asked for Susie's address under the pretense of wanting to send her flowers. Eddie instructs her to arrange a meeting with Carla. Carla arrives as scheduled, and Susie threatens her with a gun, demanding to know Henry's whereabouts. However, Carla claims she doesn't know Henry at all. Susie, thinking Carla is trying to evade responsibility, threatens to kill Jimmy. It's only then that the true mastermind behind Jimmy's actions is revealed. The gentleman John. Both Susie and Eddie are taken aback to realize that it was John who sent people to deceive Jimmy and steal the truck loaded with marijuana, causing a loss of $13.75 million worth of goods.
And they didn't even want the product. They just wanted to disrupt your business.
By the way, if you enjoy our movie recaps, we're currently hosting a giveaway for our audience. We're excited to announce that a brand new scooter awaits one lucky subscriber. Don't miss out. Subscribe and follow us to stay tuned for more updates. The person who previously prevented their products from reaching the European mainland was also John. They used Carla to deceive Jimmy and extract information from him. And there's more than just Carla acting as their inside informant. Keith, who was eliminated, was also one of their insiders. From this, it can be inferred that John is the true mastermind behind everything, with Henry merely being one of his pawns. The reason he's willing to spend so much money to buy Eddie's estate is simply to leverage Susie's infrastructure to sell his products. Once he controls all the properties, he'll become the biggest operator in all of Europe. Susie decides to go against her father's wishes and take out Henry first. She turns the little family against him, converting them into her own spies. While Eddie outwardly claims to be on the same side as Susie, he turns around and hands over the list of Susie's other 13 bases' addresses that he discovered to John's assistant. The assistant then contacts Henry.
We have what we require. You may proceed as you wish.
About fucking time.
Henry's first move is to target Jack, who is in a coma. However, upon entering, they realize they've fallen into trap. Henry's henchmen are taken out, and Henry himself is wounded by gunfire. From Henry's confession, Susie learns that Eddie betrayed her by handing over the list to John behind her back.
You've been fucking played, Susie.
The trust that Susie and Eddie had just started to rebuild crumbles once again. Susie immediately calls Gospel.
Thought you might like to know who killed your brother. Freddie Horniman blew his head clean off whilst dressed as a chicken. Then him and his brother lied through their teeth to cover it up.
Signaling the start of a dog-eat-dog battle, Gospel arrives with 3 heavily armed cars and locates Frankie's home. He calls Frankie, demanding he come out, threatening to storm the estate if he doesn't. Frankie is momentarily at a loss. When Susie's father, Bobby, learns of the situation, he angrily scolds his daughter. He urgently instructs her to support Eddie. Soon, Susie's men armed with weapons enter through the back door, as a major confrontation seems imminent. However, Gospel receives a sudden phone call. When Eddie rushes out to check, Gospel and his men have vanished without a trace, leaving everyone bewildered. Susie takes Eddie to see Bobby in prison, where they learn that it was Bobby who called Gospel. Bobby promises to compensate Gospel economically, leading Gospel to agree to retreat. The reason for the rift between Eddie and Susie is Eddie's desire to completely sever ties with their family. However, Susie disagrees. Bobby has been involved in the underworld for many years, always adhering to the belief that peace is paramount. Seeing that reconciliation between Eddie and Susie is now impossible, he decides to cut off the problem at its root by selling his own business. However, a new problem arises. If he leaves and someone else takes over the cultivation of flowers and plants on Eddie's estate, Eddie will still face the same issue. Bobby promises not to let this happen. However, Eddie worries that this plays right into John's hands, as John has always wanted to silence Bobby. Bobby reassures Eddie, stating that John is clueless about the current situation and wouldn't even get a scrap from him. He declares that he'll sell the business to the highest bidder, accepting offers of no less than $1.375 billion. All bidders must submit their bids by the end of the weekend. Although Susie disagrees with her father's approach, she reluctantly agrees to comply. Bobby gives them a dove, a symbol of peace, to deliver to each bidder. John is the first to find them. Under Susie's interrogation, he admits to orchestrating the sabotage of their business and arranging for Susie's brother to be hospitalized.
You rejected my initial approach. I needed to convince you and your father that I was in earnest.
He thought that by obtaining the addresses of Susie's additional 12 marijuana production sites from Eddie, he could threaten Susie and force her to sell her business at a lower price. However, he didn't realize that the addresses Eddie gave him were fabricated. Only after his assistant went to verify each address did he realize he had been deceived. He never expected Eddie and Susie to reconcile and turn their enemies into friends. They gave the remaining dove to Mosey and Pete. Eddie also had intentions to acquire Bobby's business, knowing Bobby's minimum price. He believed it would take around $1.8 billion for a successful bid. Despite his efforts to raise funds from various sources, he still fell short. So, he approached Henry. Henry, wanting to extricate himself from the feud between Eddie and Susie, returned the laundered $137 million to Susie and compensated Jack with another $137 million. Eddie persuaded him to invest $137 million to become partners. Henry was convinced and approached Susie, asking her to invest $320 million to become partners. After enduring so much together, facing storms and hardships, Eddie went from initially rejecting the idea to gradually enjoying the industry, especially considering how lucrative it was. Susie agreed to join as a partner, but she still harbored resentment towards Henry. Eddie advised her not to act on those feelings in the short term.
You must be pretty fucking confident if you're willing to rattle that cage.
Supremely.
The 4 doves carrying bids were released, and all flew to the same place, the prison where Bobby was incarcerated. Bobby was surprised to see Eddie and Susie's names appearing together on the same bid sheet, although they weren't the highest bidders. Ultimately, John successfully won the bid. His assistant went to the bank to report back to Bobby, but the Swiss tax authorities suddenly arrived at John's door. It turned out that Eddie had teamed up with Henry to take down John. Henry's accountant, Rick, had John's tax records and had sent them to the tax authorities and customs bureau. John was arrested for tax evasion, and all his assets were frozen. He would spend the rest of his life in prison alongside Bobby. Pete came in second in terms of bidding. Eddie found Mosey and told him that Pete had won. However, Mosey's partner had flown in all the way from Bogota, expecting a different outcome. Eddie hinted that they couldn't compete with superpowers and suggested finding another way. Under pressure from his superior, Mosey directly took Pete away without knowing the full picture. Andy arranged for Henry to deal with Mosey, only to exploit him later. After using Henry to his advantage, Eddie settled scores by shooting Henry in the head, finally resolving the turf war perfectly. Bobby greatly admired Eddie for his cunning tactics.
The whole point of me telling you I was selling my business was to wake you up. You're not buying the operation. You're investing in it. So together, we can expand our interests.
I take it you're not retiring then, Dad?
No chance.
He orchestrates from behind the bars, while Eddie perfectly plays along, creating a performance that clearly indicates Eddie being groomed as a future son-in-law.
You wasn't born to take orders. You were born to give them, to build and expand empires. I don't see a captain. I see a fucking general.
With this, The Gentleman's first season comes to an end. The series started off slow, but picked up momentum in the middle, though it seemed scattered with subplots like car theft and involvement with the gypsies. It cleverly tied them together in the grand finale. While some plot lines may have seemed trivial, overall, it's still an exciting series. For those who enjoy it, I recommend watching the original. That's all for today's commentary. Looking forward to meeting again next time.